Hey guys, happy Thursday. I hope you're having a great day. Man, it's been a quick week. I don't know if y'all felt that, but I sure have. And I'm excited about getting together again on Sunday. Love talking about Joseph. I hope you do too. This is a story that students find incredibly fascinating. Most adults do too. It's just amazing. Real fast before we jump into the lesson, though, don't forget a week from Sunday, the one after Thanksgiving, I will teach everybody collectively. If any of you want to help out, I'm certainly all for that. It would be kind of fun to team teach. But I don't want you to have to worry about prepping for Sunday school over the holiday break. I want you to enjoy that. And then we will talk more next week about the series that we're going to do just during the Christmas break, and then we'll pick the Gospel Project back up in January. But here's the deal with this lesson. For starters, if you would, guys, point the students back to James chapter 1. And I want you to do that specifically for the purpose of we constantly want to tie what we're doing on Wednesdays back to Sundays, and on Sundays back to Wednesdays. And then we have the opportunity to tie those back to what Pastor Eric or this week Dr. Lamance is preaching on Sunday. I really want them to understand all of this goes together, what we're doing as a church family goes together. And those are just good reminders too. So specifically from this lesson in James 1, James 1 talks about suffering right out the gate. We talked about that for a couple of weeks on Wednesday nights. And then James 1 also talks about temptation, which this lesson covers as well. So specifically what they need to know from this lesson, and really it makes the point greatly, suffering is what God uses us to change us and make us better for His purposes and for His glory. And then also in the temptation front, do exactly what Joseph did. When Joseph was tempted, he fled. God never calls us to try to endure temptation. He's not impressed when we put up with temptation. He always wants us to flee from sin, especially sexual sin. So help him to see that. Again, James talks about that as well at James chapter 1. And then just for a bonus verse, point them to 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 22. Flee evil and pursue what's good. Also, God promised Abraham suffering. And as a result, he promised Isaac and Jacob suffering as well. Here's why I would point that out to them. This shouldn't have come as a shock to Joseph. It shouldn't come as a shock to us as Christians when we suffer, because Jesus promised us that we would suffer. Specifically, look at the passage from John chapter 16, the last couple of verses. Jesus said specifically, I have overcome the world. Fear not, because in this world you're going to have much suffering, but I've overcome the world. He guaranteed we're going to suffer. It's just a part of life. But he's going to help us overcome it, and he has already overcome it, just like he promised Abraham. Help them to see that. Again, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the God that we serve. He's consistent, but he's also consistently good. And then the other thing, and this might sound a little confounded, but I really want you to see this, and I want the students to see this. God gave Joseph this dream. Joseph, by the way, was probably somewhere between the ages of 13 and 16. This is a young dude that God one day gave a dream and said, hey, your brothers, they're going to bow down to you someday. There's not a 16-year-old in the world, think of even the quietest kid in the world, that if he had a bunch of older siblings, that he wouldn't speak up and say, hey, I had a dream last night. God told me you're going to bow down to me. They're going to say that. And God knew that. I've heard, I don't know how many sermons preached where they made the point that Joseph was foolish. He should have just kept his mouth shut, and everything would have been fine. No, God knew exactly what Joseph was going to do with the information that he gave him. And it wasn't that God was setting him up. This was how he put his plan into action. And what you need to catch is this was going to be the thing to keep Joseph encouraged. At least it should have been. This is like the promise that God gives us all. You are going to suffer on this planet, but number one, I'm going to overcome it. And number two, I'm going to come get you out of it someday. So we've got this constant hope that our suffering is not going to be forever. This is what it should have been for Joseph. And I don't know if he received it that way, but this is how God triggered his plan in Joseph's suffering. So help them to see that. It wasn't just Joseph being foolish. This was Joseph being a teenage boy, and God understands teenage boys. They were his idea. This was how God started the whole thing. And then finally, the most important words of the whole lesson. And it says this about a dozen times throughout the lesson, I bet. God was with him. And God is still with us too. This is one of those, we're sort of leaving the students on a cliffhanger, like we're going to leave them in jail and he's there to rot. And if they don't know the story of Joseph, they're going to freak out a little bit. But help them to see God was with Joseph and he never left him. He was with him in the pit. He's with him in jail. He was with him in Potiphar's wife. He was with him when his brothers were picking on him. And yes, God is going to be with Joseph one day when he is in second command of Egypt. Guys, I love y'all. Have an awesome week, and I will see you on Sunday. Bye.